Oh, he's got
two people that
COVID.
are married.
I knew somebody, and I told
they're
them
still
somebody, but
part of
they
the
didn't know whether.
But I think at some point,
so you have. It's too bad.
this gets into the changing nature of society, right?
That ain't good. 'Cause he's got other issues.
You start to run into questions.
No, you're right. No, but I remember in Cleveland Heights, this was an issue because of like case students. There'd be like 10 kids in one house.
Yeah.
So it was cheap, but they were allowed to rent it like that.
Ready to go?
Recording,
It was
All right.
optional.
and everybody is admitted into the room.
All right, so you are recording then?
Yes.
All right. Calling the Zoning Commission regular meeting to order on the 2nd of December at 7:07. This meeting is being recorded for transcription purposes only, and the written minutes and attachments, if any, will serve as the official record of this meeting. So please call the roll.
Marzullo,
Here.
Fisher,
Here.
Schneider, absent, Crew,
Here.
Manley,
Here.
Rubel,
Here.
Arline, absent, and Ms. Rubel will be moving into the member's role for Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
In the audience are trustee Kalina, zoning inspector Wilson, and is trustee Augustine virtual?
Burns and Augustine are both virtual.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So to begin with, we need to take a look at the regular meeting minutes from November 4th, 2021. These were previously emailed out to everyone. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to review it. Has anyone noticed any adjustments we need to make before approving them?
No, I make a motion to approve.
Moved by Crew,
I'll second.
second by Fisher. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. There are also special meeting minutes. They're making their way down the table. I know we did not have an opportunity to review them prior to the meeting. I'd like everyone to take a moment and read it. It is very brief. It's half a page here. And the attachment is the presentation from Denise Testa from the Medina County Planning Commission for our special meeting that was on October 28th. So if you notice any changes, I've already got eyes on it, and noticed just one small mistake that was clerical. And then once you guys all have an opportunity to review it, we can entertain a motion to approve. So does anyone notice any other changes to the special meeting minutes? Anything we need to adjust? No? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the special meeting minutes from the zoning workshop.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Manley,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Rubel. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. All right, outstanding. So typically we go through the old business first. I think it might be worthwhile to, if there's no objection, to bring the new business, a preliminary site plan review for the Estates at Kabbalah Farm. Front of the old business, as I'm sure it will take us a fair amount of time to get through the old business. Mr. Wienerman, if you wouldn't mind stepping up, giving us kind of a an update, what all this is, and
Sure.
we can get through it.
Ben Weinerman with Pride One Construction. Thank you for your time in advance tonight. We have in front of you the estates at Cabala Farm. Existing property is an 87-acre farm. Been in the Cabala family for, I believe, about 5 to 6 decades. These are 2+ acre lots ranging from 2 acres up to a little over 7 acres. 26 lots in total. This is a rural residential style subdivision with ditch enclosures and 20-foot wide streets. The lots and homes will be serviced by septic and wells, as we've laid out on the site plan in front of you. Septic systems that are laid out on that property were designed and suggested by a local septic designer, Septic Sage. Beyond that, if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you for your time.
Before you step away, I see we're seeing a cul-de-sac at the on the western end of Street B. Is that new? Is it temporary? Because I believe what originally went through the planning commission was a stub street.
It is a temporary cul-de-sac.
Okay.
And Chris, jog my memory, I believe it was required or asked for by the highway engineer or someone in the county. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's one of Matt Martin's comments at preliminary plat review. Number 16, temporary cul-de-sac at west terminus of Street B should be located at subdivision boundary.
And now did, honestly, I apologize, I can't recall. Was it?
It was drawn
Pride-
this way at the plat review.
Oh no, I'm talking about the stub street, not the temporary cul-de-sac. But so having a stub street there, was that your intention, or was that I believe it might have been Medina County Planning said they want a stub street.
Correct. Yeah, they wanted a stub street for the future
Okay.
development of the west.
On your exhibit A, you have 29 lots, but on your map, you have 26 lots. I'm sorry, I don't know that thing. This was,
I'm sorry.
you don't have that?
No, I don't have it handy, but
Oh.
I do, yeah, the HOA declarations and covenants,
Right.
that is a typo. There should only be 26.
Okay. There were a lot of typos in there,
Really?
in the HOA thing, yeah. Yeah.
Has there been much more discussion on sublot 25, which might qualify as a rear lot? One of the things we had mentioned, one of the things we had talked about, I think, when you first presented this plan a few months ago, was sublot 25. And I think that the way it's configured does not currently meet our requirements for a rear lot, correct?
I believe when we came in front of you before, it was drawn differently at the concept plan review.
Okay, so they modified it.
does confirm.
Okay.
And I'm having difficulty seeing where the
55.
frontages on the. Okay, there
I
you go.
see a
So it's
90 on it.
55 feet of
Yeah.
frontage. All right. And so you guys are contending that the frontage for lot 25 is off of 303 as opposed to Street A, correct?
No,
No,
Okay,
that's fair.
no, the frontage is on Street A.
okay.
Because you expanded that to 55 feet, which was
Now
the issue
it's-
before,
yeah,
it now meets
Now we
the
have enough frontage. that-
frontage, right?
Got it.
And you have 7 acres for rear.
For the
Right.
rear lot. Yep. Yeah, and originally, I think originally that wasn't gonna be it was listed as a rear lot, even though it didn't have it. But then there was the rear lot over on the eastern side of Street A that now, that's
is now
redrawn,
2.
where you have 1, 2, 5, and 6
Right.
are all part of what used to be, I think it was just lot 1 or lot 2, something like
That
that.
sounds great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can address that, Marcus. I have the original that was never presented.
Right.
Right, this, let's get on the speaker, Chris Lane, Hinckley Township trustee. This was never presented to the township as an application, as a preliminary plan. This was only presented to the Medina County Department of Planning Services as a preliminary plan for them. However, it was looked at by Hinckley Township because myself, Chair Marzullo, Tom Wilson, and Suzanne Peterlin had all put our eyes on this and then submitted comments to the county for this. And you are correct. They had what we consider to be a rather creative interpretation of our zoning resolution because they were using the frontage on Center Road, but they did have the 55-foot originally along the incoming street. However, the lot was only a little over 4 acres. And so it really didn't meet what we felt was the spirit and intent of a legal lot because they didn't have access to Center Road because the Ohio Department of Transportation is only going to allow them one access coming into the subdivision. So there was a number of things that we had commented on at the planning commission level. And that was one of them that we asked them to remedy that, which they did. So that lot now would meet because it is over 7 acres and it has the 55-foot of frontage. So it does meet our definition of a rear lot. We also asked them to combine several of the lots, and where the other rear lot was, which was on the opposite side of that street, you'll see they took those lots. Originally on the cul-de-sac, there was two 2-acre lots, and the rear of the cul-de-sac, there's a 3-acre lot, and they now increased those lots to be 6.1 acres, 7.1 acres, and 3-acre lot went to 5.5 acres, and then that 4-acre lot went to 7 acres because they shifted the street to the east. So they actually moved the street over some from where it was originally at. So they really followed what we requested of them. My recommendation for the future would be to take a good look at our definition of lots because as Mr. Wilson had pointed out, we don't really clarify where the access is. So that would be something that maybe the board wants to explore in the future is where the access points are to those lots. But we appreciate the fact that they did follow the recommendations that the township had submitted to the planning commission. They made those changes. They eliminated some lots, which is why you see a reduction in the total number of lots. They increased some of the lot sizes, which is exactly what we asked them to do. And they made the rear lot a actual legally conforming lot. So we certainly appreciate that they took our comments into consideration, went back to the drawing board on those and resubmitted.
Thank you.
And I know previously we had made mention of a downstream water study. Is that something that it gets, Chair, Trustee Kalina, is that something that is then submitted later on in the process or?
That's something that they'll have to work on and submit that as part of their final.
Okay.
You know, right now they're in a preliminary review process. So it's been preliminary review at the county level and now they've submitted it to your board for a preliminary, and whatever you decide you need to put into your motion and send back to them, you know, those will be items that you want to look at. And of course you have the site plan checklist, which is, you know, right there in the resolution, which you can go through this evening with them and see what you're going to want them to bring back when they come back beforehand.
Anyone else have any other questions regarding the preliminary site plan at this point?
No.
Mr. Wilson, did you have any input before we go through the checklist?
Well, I would just say, I went through the homeowners bylaws or whatever they called. And whoever put them together did a good job as far as in line with our code. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that, the setbacks were there and everything. So I think we'll be okay with the covenants and restrictions.
I saw guest houses in there though. In the HOA.
And that's in the,
It mentions guest houses, all resident, the pit for the roof pitch.
I missed that. I'm glad you did.
So I didn't know, what, there's no definition of the guest house, but it just mentions all residence buildings, guest houses, and garages shall have a sloping roof with a minimum pitch of blah, blah, blah.
We can remove the phrase guest house.
Yeah,
That would be no problem.
given that we have one.
It's a good catch, Michelle. Thank you.
And we can fix the typos too.
All right. If nothing else, we can go through the preliminary site plan checklist and make our recommendations and either approve with modifications or deny. And again, this is going through the checklist to see really what we're looking at is it present? Is it in the initial submission? A property location map? Yes. The location of existing structures within the development area and access points? Yes. The general location of existing buildings, parking, and access drives on parcels within 100 feet of the site? Yes. A topographic survey of the proposed development area with contour lines at 2-foot intervals? I believe I saw that. Yes. Existing major vegetation features, wooded areas and large isolated trees, 1 foot or more in diameter. Which overlay do you have that on? If any.
You can see it on this one, the satellite.
Third site plan. There's a light clouded line, like per se, on sublot 3 and 4. That line you can see there. That is the perimeter of the tree line.
I'm sorry. If you wouldn't mind, I'm looking for a clouded patch. This little
this thing right
White line right there.
got it. All right. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Which one? Oh, that line.
Copy of a copy.
I need color coded.
What Mr. Fisher's looking at right now.
It's, to me, this is much easier. The satellite. It has everything overlaid, so. He's got it better.
Yeah.
We're looking at copies of copies.
The way the property lays out, it's actually really nice. There's really minimal clearing that'll need done to do the development as a whole. And we're going to try to leave as many, heritage type trees, larger trees as we can for the new lot owners.
All right. Thank you. Location of wetlands as depicted on the delineation produced by a professional wetland specialist licensed by the state of Ohio. The floodplain boundary and floodplain elevation as delineated by FEMA rivers and streams and their related river or stream bank ponds and water courses. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
Delineation of existing drainage patterns on the property, yes. Existing wells and well sites, yes. The general location of development areas identified by use, including any fee simple lots and restricted open space areas if part of the proposed project.
Can I ask is there going to be any property reserved for the HOA for signage or anything, or is it all part of, it looks like from the lot, it's part of sublots, so you won't have separate common area.
Right.
So, right.
Well, that's a big question about the signage because most subdivisions want a sign up. And you need to be 25 feet off of the properties next to that road for your sign. So it looks like you might need a variance.
So the sign could not go in the right of way there?
That's correct. It has to be outside the right.
They could do something like the reserve at Walden Pond has, correct? Where they did an island in the center and you had two separate right of ways, but you can't have it.
Okay.
Or within the center of the street, I should say,
Or-
so it's on both sides.
Or they could eliminate the sign.
Or there's just.
There isn't a requirement for a sign.
Okay.
So I
They
say
would prefer a sign.
Yeah, most of them.
Yeah, well, I know I
Wow.
think it's in Granger that you can't have signs for the subdivision.
Okay.
Is that correct, Tom? I think it is Granger. Okay. Where were we? All right. The general layout of the proposed circulation system for vehicles and pedestrians, other proposed public ways, access points, and the parking and service system. I'm assuming there's not going to be sidewalks in here. Is that correct? Okay. A summary table showing total acres of the proposed development, the number of acres devoted to each type of use, including streets and open space, and the number of dwelling units by type. Yes. Proposed phases if the project is to be developed in stages, including the phases during which any common facilities are anticipated to be constructed. This is all one phase, correct? The following,
That doesn't
this isn't conservation development, doesn't apply. Other reasonable information is the Township Zoning Commission may require in order to evaluate the general concept of the proposed development. In the case of subdivision review, the Township Zoning Commission reviews for zoning compliance only. Subdivision approval, disapproval, or approval with modifications is determined by the Medina County Planning Commission. So, with everything there, I think what we would recommend is if you do intend to move forward with having a sign on the final submission, have something that obviously meets what's necessary. Other than that, I don't think we're missing anything in this preliminary submission, unless someone else caught something I missed. No? Then I would entertain a motion to approve the site plan with as submitted with the recommendation for fixing the signage for your final submission.
I would say, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Manley,
I can second.
seconded by Mr. Fisher. Please call the roll.
Marzullo,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Rubel,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for moving us up in the agenda too. I appreciate it.
Totally. I'm sure you don't want to sit here and listen to us debate the word "the" for the next.
I do have, before you guys leave, I do have a couple questions for you real quick. Thank you. I think I've been very publicly clear about my concerns about the stormwater runoff from this, and that's because some of the downstream neighbors have been affected. I know the one driveway immediately to the east was washed out several years ago when we had a heavy rain event. The Medina County Soil and Water Conservation District had put together a very nice summary of recommendations. And then you had already addressed some of those in your presentation. So I appreciate that tree removal will be limited to the construction areas only. And I think that's something that everybody in Hinckley Township appreciates as well. They had also noted that due to the slope of the parcel, emphasis should be placed on stormwater retention. And their office was asking for green infrastructure considerations in regards to stormwater, and those implementation practices would include things such as pervious pavement, bioretention swales to increase the amount of stormwater infiltration, which would reduce water runoff, filter the stormwater, lessen flooding potential, and reduce erosion issues for downstream neighbors. And so I guess my question is, have you put thought into that? Have you guys worked with Travis on that at all? Think about some of those things?
Yeah, we of course put thought into it. I understand that the neighbor downstream actually had to upsize their culvert pipe for their driveway.
Right, and the other neighbor immediately east of that neighbor has done, if anybody's driven by them, they've been working on the front over there, doing quite a bit of excavation work there.
Yeah, the drainage study is something we always have to do, and as Matt Martin commented in the preliminary plat review, that it was one of their office's comments, and that it's something that we need to complete and submit with the construction drawing, so it will be addressed.
Okay, I just want to make sure that when you come back in, that's something that's discussed with the board in terms of, and then Travis is, very good about addressing those things, but I want to make sure it's something that's on everybody's radar.
Absolutely.
Because it's something we want to make sure is addressed as a township. Also, I'm curious as to what the plan will be in place as far as responsibility for maintenance of that within the HOA. How have you thought about who's going to be in charge of those?
Stormwater,
the retention basins.
Sure. Typically, it's the HOAs that maintain them, unless the county has some other stipulations. In some counties, they require easements from other ponds so that they can come in and maintain and be same with that. But there'll be an easement for access and everything for the county.
Very good. Very good. And then as long as that's addressed in your HOA documents as well, moving forward. And of course, the county prosecutor will review that before anything goes through final approval. And they normally have a number of recommendations that they make to those documents when they review them. Thank you very much. I will say, just as a side comment, has nothing to do with your proposal, but Tom will remember our original, I won't call it a proposal, but our original inquiry regarding this property, which was in, I'm going to say January 20 maybe, it was a while ago, was for a senior housing, and I think they used the term complex at this location. So that was... yeah,
Not a friendly term.
Not a friendly term, right? But we obviously, Tom and I did discuss that, and I think we made our position very clear on what our thoughts were on that at that point in time. So they obviously went in a different direction, and we appreciate that you took the township's initial comments, made back in March and April into heart, and I went back to the drawing board, with the subdivision.
Absolutely. Thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that takes care of tonight's new business. But we can get back, now we can get into the old business. One of the things that I passed out towards the start of the meeting was was some research that Michelle had done and a little bit that I threw in there as well regarding the short-term rentals. I know this is something that we've been wrestling with the last few months trying to define. And if you recall on the in our last meeting, I had requested everyone do a little bit of research, look through it, and Michelle was kind enough to pull all of the definitions that may pertain to the conversation throughout Medina County. And I printed those out and provided them to you as well. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind running through the presentation from the Village of Peninsula that you provided. Very interesting. And then we can get into just kind of the information that I had passed on.
So I realized that Peninsula is not in Medina County, but when I was looking at short-term rentals, bed and breakfast, homes, things like that, this one popped up. So it appears, and I could not find their actual resolutions for Peninsula, but it appeared that they did some research on it, on why they should have short-term rentals and how it may affect the village. So the information on here is just a PDF file. And I can't go over it by line item because I didn't put it to memory. I actually found it a month right after we had our last meeting, and then I forgot to send it and I just sent it to Matt tonight. So, but they did the research and they looked at the different associations. I think last week or last month, we talked about the Airbnb and then vacation rentals by owner. So they identified those and the number of them and the locations where they're at in their village. They looked at, what are other communities doing? I mean, in comparison, should they allow this? So that's on the third page, what other communities are doing, and they provided the different townships or communities that are comparable. Don't forget, Peninsula is very popular because it borders the Cuyahoga Valley. So I thought that was a good comparison because we have the metro parks here. So I thought that was interesting. Talked about the pros and cons for the short-term rentals, and that's on page 112. And then the last page is some concerns in regulating, which are, true concerns, and we should probably look at all of those. And I think we mentioned quite a few of them last month. And then ideas about, how are we going to implement this? What are the fees, requirements? Are we going to have a cap on licenses? I mean, there's a lot of considerations, but I just thought that this is a good document to look at and maybe review it if we are thinking of doing short-term rentals. It might give us some other insights.
Thank you, Michelle. One of the things that I've come up with, I've been chewing on it quite a bit for the last month. And what has stood out to me is that we really are struggling with a definition as to what a short-term rental is. And looking through some of the different verbiage throughout the township or throughout the county, it's not necessarily something that we're going to break into. All right, all short-term rentals versus a bed and breakfast. Or I don't know if we want to expand slightly on it from a short-term rental to B&Bs or something along those lines. But I will say, for whatever reason, in my mind, whenever I think of short-term rental, I think a 30-day minimum. If it's under 30 days, becomes a short-term rental. I've done a fair amount of looking through some different publications, and the definition of short-term or establishing residency, I'm not going to say it's arbitrary, but it varies wildly. If you go to, for example, Ohio State University, if you want resident rates, you have to be a resident for 12 months before you can qualify. To establish when you move into the state of Ohio, you're supposed to get your driver's license within 30 days. And it just, in my mind, 30 days seems to be that rate. And I've actually asked quite a few people throughout the township. Some people have said, oh, well, anything less than a year is short term, or less than 6 months is short term. And that seems a bit exorbitant for a short-term rental to me. But I appreciate anyone else's feedback, because I think that's kind of where we're hinging right here is, all right, what is that number associated with short-term rental?
I agree with you. I think 30 days is a very reasonable number for delineating, it's 1 month basically. I'll say also that going back, one of the things you had said is a bed and breakfast versus other type of short-term rental. And I think Peninsula actually did a nice job here. They actually created two separate definitions, one called an owner-occupied short-term rental, which I think would make it more of a B&B type, and then short-term home rentals where the homeowner is not present at the rental. And they actually have separate criteria based upon whether the owner's present at the property or the owner's not present at the property. So their section on short-term rentals is 8 pages. It's pretty extensive, the work they've done to regulate this section. So
It would seem to me that if you're bread and breakfast, or if you're living in the home and providing bed and breakfast, now don't you have the health department involved with licensing and all that kind of stuff? So I don't know why we would have to address that if somehow maybe that if any kind of additional license is required, we don't consider that a viable situation or something. For example, Our Lady of Grace has a hall to rent out. It hasn't been used in a year, but the county health department still comes in once a year to make their review. So because that's the way it was set up. If your bed and breakfast would have some other people looking over their shoulder. And secondly, I think it's 30 days or less. Just a guess.
Yeah, not minimum of 30.
Not a minimum, a maximum.
Yeah. And that's what I found too when looking at it.
I must not have been clear. That's what I meant.
Like, yeah.
If you're staying less than 30 days, it's a short-term rental.
It's a lease.
Right.
Yeah, if it's over 30 days, okay, I'm not necessarily calling that a short-term rental. That's
Okay.
to your point, it's a lease. Less than 30 days. I misspoke. I apologize.
That's okay. I'm glad you clarified that.
As far as the B&B, I read an interesting case about it was actually out in Pennsylvania, so it's not necessarily completely apples to apples here, but there was a VRBO that was trying to act, or an Airbnb, one of the two, trying to act as an Airbnb, and ultimately the township said, no, you're a B&B, and therefore you didn't get the license, you can't do it. Went to court, and the homeowner won because while those people stay there, they had access to the kitchen, and the actual breakfast wasn't provided to them. They could go down and make it themselves, and so therefore it wasn't defined as a B&B.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Could see it.
And I think that's really what we're trying to get into here is, okay, let's get our definitions right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about restricting or enabling. It's about, okay, what is it? And in our community, I think there aren't a whole lot of people coming in to just spend a weekend. And if they're coming in anything less than 30 days, I'm fine with that being considered a short-term rental. And to the point that Lindsay brought up, I want to say it was 2 months ago, it might have been last month, that The Sixth Circuit Court said that it is a residential use when you use it as a VRBO. Much the same way, group homes are considered residential uses. So we can't arbitrarily say, okay, well, now you're operating as a business. And it doesn't give us the teeth to regulate it. So what we need to do is define and determine, all right, what's appropriate and what isn't.
Mr. Marzullo, in terms of defining, I think when I didn't print anything out or send anything to any of the board members yet, because I thought it best if I kind of saw the direction we were going. So I apologize for that.
No problem.
But sort of just like a quick synopsis of sort of, there's a couple ways to go here. So one would be there's no short-term rentals in the residential districts if we make that a business use. So that would be something we could argue if we so define it as part of the business districts only. Another one would be we allow short-term rentals within the residential districts, but we're talking about either allowing a conditional use for a residential district so that it has to go through the BZA, and I think we talked about that. And I looked a lot at these regulations between municipalities, and I didn't find anything in Medina County that I really liked. Just an example, so around the Portage Lakes area in Coventry Township, they have a whole registration process. So they do allow short-term rentals. There's a very specific set of rules for it. And if those rules are violated, basically your conditional use permit is revoked. Another interesting regulation that I was able to find just in trying to summarize is the city of Dublin. I realize we're not a city, but that particular municipality allows a maximum of 2 weeks per year per property of short-term rentals. And it has to be a minimum of 7 nights for each rental, and you have to register the duration and the names of the renters with the municipality. So there's just so many things that may go into a definition. So it's interesting.
When I was trying to work through this, one of the things that I was juggling is the idea of first, if someone wants to rent their home, I mean, that's their prerogative. It's their home. They have that right to do it. But I also know that as neighbors, we have some obligation to our neighbors as well. What I'm looking at and what I was considering was not just the impact that it has on our neighbors, but also on our safety forces. If there is a structure fire and the fire department has a reason to believe that it's vacant, they're going to deal with it much differently than if there's someone inside. What I was toying with the idea of is, all right, if you want to do short-term rentals, you have to register with the township. You file a fee. You file all right, this is who's going to be here over this time period. $25. Submit. All right, these are when people are going to be here, and then that information is relayed over to our safety forces. And simultaneously, I think it's important that the owner of the short-term rental has someone, if not themselves, that's local to deal with any issues that may arise from it as well. And these are just kind of some ideas that have been coming to me, and I just want to throw them out there as fodder to maybe chew on and build on or rip apart, whatever.
So we're looking not only at the definition, but at the placement, correct, of where they would be viable, right? So when you're looking at the various townships, and I didn't have a chance to put them on that spreadsheet, I also tried to find where they were permitted, the permitted usage. So for instance, in Granger, bed and breakfast was in the local commercial district. In Lafayette Township, it's a conditional permitted use in their rural residential district. So when you go through and you look at the various townships, they're all different as to where they want them. Litchfield is conditionally permitted in the residential district, but it's a permitted use in the circle district, which I'm believing in Litchfield Circle.
Yeah, right.
And then it's a permitted use in the commercial district. I can go on. Medina Township's interesting. They didn't identify it as a bed and breakfast. They call it a tourist home. So, but that is in the intensive business district. So, they're all a little bit different as to where they're allowed placement. So that's why I was asking, are we looking at a definition or are we looking at location?
I think both.
Well, you have
And then
to.
some, and then
Right,
some.
you have to. You can't
So-
do one without the other.
But if it's considered a residential use,
Correct.
which by law it is, I don't know that we can restrict its use in any of the residential districts.
Unless you did
and
it by
I could be wrong,
acreage.
but I thought that
Acres.
the ruling was that it is a residential use unless the regulations state otherwise.
That's correct. So
So-
that particular sixth
Okay.
district case was specific, it's a long story, but specific to restrictive covenants that required residential use. And as a mutual reciprocal covenant, it was found to be, even though it's a short-term rental, it's a residential
It's still
use because it's not
It's not
prohibited.
restricted.
Yes.
Got it.
First of all, I like the idea or the thought of having a register here. I would like to see somebody that's interested talk about residential areas first, register here once a year for some amount of money. And then when somebody comes, they send an email in that's then forwarded to the safety courses, because I agree completely with you, Matt. But rather, if we're going to leave this with the BZA and a conditional, some of these things happen on a Wednesday, they want to be in on Friday because they have some reason. So BZA meets twice a month, and that probably won't change. So if we could do an evaluation every year on a particular situation.
And I think what originally I was thinking was they submit a packet, $25 every time they submit it, to the zoning office. And then that information is then relayed over the safety forces. Anytime they have to amend it, they have to repay that fine or that filing fee. But you can send in 30, 60, 90 days in advance if you want.
If but I could tell you, having used some of these, because some of a situation, at least in our lifetime, 3 times.
Yeah, no.
We
Absolutely.
did it on a Sunday one time for a Tuesday.
Which is still something that they can do. They can still come in, hand it off to Suzanne or whoever's in the zoning office and say, here you go. Someone's coming in on Tuesday and here's my fee.
I don't think that I would connect the BZA's review with each instance of a short-term rental. I would say that the BZA would get it for a conditional use to
By the
set
year,
that up.
or we used to do them on 5-year deals for other things until the court said once you grant a variance, it's forever. You
Yeah.
can't make our conditionals forever. You can't make them come back unless you can prove, so I can't remember the words they used, but unless you can prove that they broke the arrangements that they agreed.
And I almost think you could say it's indefinite because that use can go away. So the second they
That's
stop
true.
using it as a short-term rental, it goes away as a short-term rental anyway. And you can even maybe define that to say, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is. If it's not been used as a short-term rental, the conditional use goes away and you have to reapply.
So you could have lost it during COVID. Now you got to start all over.
Right, potentially. But that would be a one-time thing to go
Right.
through and get a
Okay.
conditional use. And then this permit would be each instance, or if they can maybe apply for multiple, if they knew multiple names at the same time, whatever it is, to just as a notification to safety services.
And I think generally, like this is, for example, in Coventry Township, the short-term rental permit time frame is for 1 year. So once it's granted, you get it for a year, but you have to do the periodic reports to the township as your renters change.
And that's exactly what Peninsula is as well. It's a 1-year certificate.
I feel like we're making progress. There's something wrong here.
We might be going down a good path.
Can I ask, do we like the idea that we separate out owner-occupied short-term rentals from non-owner occupied short-term rentals, or do we treat those as one and the same? Because that will make a difference from a definition standpoint.
I think we separate them out, and owner occupied are not permissible.
In the residential.
And the residential. So basically, B and Bs would be at most allowed in the business districts. Short terms would be.
Well, I guess I'm just looking at it from the nightmare standpoint of someone living in, any development just says, hey, you know what? I'm going to rent out one of the rooms in my basement.
And
I can.
Yeah. I think that makes sense because now you're breaking it down. You have probably 2 families at a minimum that are occupying this residence because you have the owner-occupied family as well as the renting family.
Even though the owner is occupied, that owner may not be there at the time the house is rented. He may not be living there. And all the places we ever stayed, the owner was not there, not physically there. They lived there when we left.
Sure.
They go to a motel.
So I'm thinking of owner occupied totally differently than from what you're.
And I'll say
For
that
example, and this is.
Was it a bed and breakfast or was it
No, it was these are what we.
vacation?
It was a full, twice we had a house and once we had a condo. And
Well, I
all
know,
the
but-
owners just left.
No, I know, but that's
That would be the
different. A bed and
short-term
breakfast
rental.
is where they
It
take
was
care
still
of you while
it was
you're
still
there.
a short term. It was
Yeah.
short.
and
Yeah.
this definition of owner-occupied that I'm looking at for Peninsula specifically says the owner is concurrently, personally occupying the premise with the renter.
Right.
With
So they
the
are-
renter.
With
With
the
the
renter.
renter.
With the
Right,
renter.
like a
That's
bed-
how
like
they're
a bed
treated,
and
like a bed and
breakfast.
breakfast. So, and I really think that's what they were going with this definition is one is a bed and breakfast and the second one is a typical Airbnb, if you will.
So yeah, I think breaking out the owner occupied versus I think what we're all
As a
on the same page is
short-term.
short-term rental is certainly worthwhile.
So the consensus is the owner has to be there
For owner-occupied.
under owner occupied.
Owner occupied,
They
the
can't,
owner would be there concurrently, and that would not be okay in the residential districts. That would only be authorized in the business districts, perhaps.
Well, unless they're strategic, or I keep saying strategic because for work, we always have a strategic plan, comprehensive plan. And however, that is going to be modified or updated.
well, those are going to be recommendations too.
Right.
So
But I mean, it's all gonna
we'll
it's all
see-
gonna be
we'll see how
tied
that-
in.
But we'll see how that.
So here's this definition of a short-term rental, non-owner occupied. Short-term home rental means any dwelling that is rented in its entirety for less than 30 consecutive days by persons other than the owner, from which the owner receives monetary compensation and the owner is not present and personally living on the premise during the time of the rental.
Very verbose, but I think it is comprehensive as well. I think it covers the heart of the matter.
The only thing that definition does not include is if you rent out a room, but I don't know if we even want to allow.
It doesn't.
But it does because it says the entirety of the home.
Right, that's why I'm saying that that definition does not include, right?
Includes-
Yeah, which is, I think.
Which is probably what we want,
Yeah.
because we don't want a bunch of separate rentals within the same
Correct.
residential.
Because then you're
unit.
turning into multifamily essentially.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
you're running a hotel then.
right.
Actually, which,
This is Peninsula.
that's Peninsula.
Mhm.
Now, if,
And they actually provide a definition of renter as well. So, I mean, they've got,
if you look at the first part of that handout that I gave you, it was a very worthwhile article I read. It was actually on a city planning or community development website. And this article was written actually November 21st, so right before Thanksgiving. And it proved very timely for us anyways, for our conversation. Some of the standards that a lot of places are dealing with, as well as, you know, some of the hiccups and suggested ways of dealing with short-term rentals. I would be kind of curious to see if, and I'm not aware of it, but I'd be curious to see if we could work with someplace like Airbnb or VRBO and say, okay, yes, short-term rentals are authorized, but they have to have a license or they have to have a file with the township. Can that be a requirement that they upload before they're able to rent it out? As opposed to someone saying, all right, well, I'm just not going to file. I'm not going to go down to the township and let them know that I'm going to have people here the 12th through the 15th this month.
So you mean you're wondering if VRBO has a a mechanism?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know. I've used them, but I don't know.
For some reason, I would think they would because they've gotten burned a couple of times on different situations. So,
But mandatory, I mean.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, what do they do in Florida in some of these places where there's a tax that goes to the state and local tax? They must have some way.
Oh.
But they wouldn't pay the tax.
Well, they're not going to pay the $25 either. The renters are going to. It's all passed through. I mean,
Right.
well, when we would rent in Florida for a month, well, actually 6 weeks, they right on the slip date we got showed us the tax so much to the county and so much to the state.
Mhm.
Remember, they don't have an income tax, so there's all kinds of
answer that.
If you wouldn't mind, come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, address, and
Ron Wada, 1575 Cooter Road. So Airbnb, VRBO will collect the fees and pay them, so, which is what happens in my short-term rentals. And they pay the county the bed taxes and that sort of thing. Is that what you're concerned about?
No, I'm not concerned about it. Just trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
that's what
I wanted a line to go back so that we know what's going on without having Tom or a slew of police running up and down checking who's doing what.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, these are.
An oversight. That's what I was.
Yeah, right. I mean, as far as using them to kind of help watch over it. I don't think that would happen. I mean, they're a worldwide
Yeah.
company. It's pretty big, but I thought you were asking about like some of the taxes, like the bed taxes and that sort of thing.
Well, my comment was regarding Florida and long-term, because we have rented down there for
Mhm.
11 years or 12 years. And we'd get a bill from the homeowner, and it would all show down there, the taxes. We wrote one check, but they would show, and I presume they paid it over. But from time to time,
And the counties watch over that, so they
I've been told they do, but
they do.
I stumbled across a couple of situations where the homeowner was kind of not doing that.
Yeah,
I
well,
was none of my
I can
business. I
imagine
wasn't staying there, I had nothing.
They do. They believe me. They watch that. The counties do for the bed taxes
Yeah, well,
for sure. But they'll collect that, and in certain counties that's required. That Airbnb already has an understanding with Cattaraugus County, where one of mine is. I mean, it just comes right out. It's right in the bill when you're renting the house. It shows all your payments, and it shows the bed tax, and that's where it goes.
So I think
So
one of the
my question was more, not necessarily for backwards looking as it is, all right, is there a mechanism that VRBO or Airbnb has in place where you have to upload or put something on their website to prove, yes, I'm authorized to do this. I have this permit from my township. I can do this.
Yeah, there isn't right now.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that it won't be. It's Airbnb, but I mean, they're evolving all the time.
Yeah.
They're figuring things out, and they're doing a really good job of it. But
Yeah.
as of right now, because I follow it really closely, there's nothing like that now. But that might not be a bad idea, but I doubt just by calling them and suggesting that it would happen.
Yeah, probably not.
But they do have webinars of their own where people within the community, the people that run, can voice those concerns. And it's a couple times a year that it happens. And I haven't seen anybody bring that up at all.
So let me ask it a different way. So if a county or a city requires a permit as part of their condition for allowing short-term rental at a location, Airbnb doesn't request from the homeowner a copy of that permit as part of the onboarding of that property? They just assume that they are in compliance with any
Not that I know
regulations?
of. Not that I know of. I mean, they've never asked that. And presently, there's none of the counties that I'm in has any kind of licensing, so I really can't answer that. But I would guess probably not.
I'm just kind of surprised because the county could come in while someone's actually occupying the property and basically shut it down. And those renters could be out of luck.
I don't think that could ever happen. I don't think they'd stormtroop the house and say, get the hell out. They would handle it, through the legal system and not come in with a SWAT team and throw people out. That doesn't make sense to me.
You don't even get rid of renters that easy, right?
Touche. Thank you very much, Mr. Wade. I appreciate it. So do we want to continue mulling over the definition of a short-term rental? Or move forward with what Mr. Fisher just read as, hey, this is pretty solid? Because ultimately it's something that we're going to have to put in a text amendment. Part of the text amendment will also include the adjustments to the alternative energy facilities. And these are things that we know the text amendments take quite a while. In fact, you probably have your packet in front of you, orange paper this time. This is the most recent text amendment that we'll be able to put into our resolutions as they were approved by the trustees.
Halloween.
But if it's something we want to move forward with that particular definition, we can. I feel like it's robust enough.
I do as well. I think, as we go through where we put this and what kind of regulations we apply, inevitably the definition might change slightly or it could be completely rewritten. But I think that that's enough of a basis to say, okay, we now understand what a short-term rental is. What kind of regulations do we impose on short-term rentals, if any, and move forward?
If any, yeah.
Right.
And, I think it is important to get the definitions of these things out there. Just the same way with service station. Imagine if that had been updated, in the 80s. We could have avoided a whole bunch of problems with that. So it is important to continue to update and remain timely with our definitions in the resolution. And that goes into I think we will also need to pull out a definition for a group home.
There was one of them in that.
Yes.
There's several of them.
Yeah, several.
Several definitions of group homes. And of family.
Yes. And I don't know how much latitude we have with regard to group homes due to the FHA and FHAA federal laws.
And that's something that I certainly think that we should rely on the prosecutor's office if we find some definition that we're on point with, or we think to obtain a formal legal opinion on that.
Yeah, definitely worthwhile to have the conversation. I think with a group home.
Wasn't there something in that material we were given at our seminar about the federal,
The Fair Housing Act.
fair housing
Housing
thing
Act
about
and
group?
the
Because I can
federal
tell you, as I
housing
think I mentioned before on the BZA, we had a situation 130th where the feds just stepped in and said this will be, because they were supporting it.
And I think that's there's always the potential that will happen, but I don't know that we necessarily don't want to at least have some level of definition.
No, I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying there are situations where you
Right.
don't have any choice.
Right.
Or could have, let me rephrase that, could have no choice.
So I looked up a few definitions of a group home as well, and so Brunswick Hills, they separate an adult family home from a group home, and they basically do it based upon the number of unrelated adults. So they say if you have 3 to 5 unrelated adults, you're an adult family home. If you have 6 to 16, you're a group home. I don't know if I like that dichotomy that they have there, but that was their way of doing it. Montville, they call it a group home for handicapped persons, and they say a licensed residential facility that provides room and board, personal care, habilitative services, and supervision in a family setting for at least 9 handicapped people. So anything under the 9 doesn't even meet their definition of a group home. The term group home for handicapped persons does not include halfway house or other housing facilities serving as an alternative to incarceration, nursing home, resting home, boarding house, room housing, lodging house, residential treatment home, care facility, special care home, or other such building. And then they define handicap. Lafayette Township has this definition that's called a group residential facility. A group residential facility is a community residential facility licensed and or approved and regulated by the state of Ohio, which provides rehabilitative or habilitative services. And they divided into 2 classes, class 1 and class 2. The class, I think, let's see. Class 1 is any state, federal, or locally approved dwelling or place used as a foster home for children or adults, not including nursing homes, or as a home for the care and rehabilitation of dependent or pre-delinquent children. for the physically handicapped or disabled, or for those with mental illnesses or developmental disabilities. A Class 1 type A group residential facility contains 6 or more residents exclusive of staff. A Class 1 type B residential facility contains 5 or less residents. And then they have this Class 2 group, which is basically the halfway house. So they break it down kind of based upon, mental illness or some sort of other dependencies versus some sort of correctional halfway type house. And they zone out based upon those 2 classes. So there's, at least that I found within those 3 townships, quite a different range of how they're defining it. But they're all at least making some attempt to put something in their books with respect to what these things are.
It's a big topic to tackle. Trying to figure out how do we want to break them out? Is it based on age? Is it based on,
I think it almost needs to be based upon how they're operating and, whether there are employees that are working at the homes, which is, I think, something that Ms. Rubel has mentioned before, as opposed to just 4 people living together. But I don't know. The other consideration, Chairman, is, these 2, short-term rentals and group homes, can both be very complicated topics. And I almost don't know if we want to work these both concurrently, or if we want to say, let's work on short-term, let's work on short-term rentals, and then let's work on group homes. And we can always not send the text amendments up until we have both sections worked out, but at least not have part of a discussion on short-term and then move to group home, and because
they're not necessarily inextricably linked. Yeah.
And what's most likely to affect our residents or property owners here?
Depends on the day.
That's true.
That's true.
I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. It really does. It depends on what pops up tomorrow.
What business venture is out there?
Yes.
Well, sure.
In fact, I'm looking at the time right now, and I'm wondering how much time Mr. Wilson's going to need to go over what he has to go over this evening for us to take a look at. What do you think about?
I don't need a lot of time. It's just to inform you folks of what's happening on the corner there. I'd say 10 minutes.
All right, great. But I think that's going to be kind of case in point of what we're talking about. Like, people, you never know what's coming until it's there. And that's one of the things that I know as a commission we struggle with is, okay, how can we be forward thinking and leaning forward when, and then something that we haven't even thought about blindsides us. But if we try to do everything simultaneously, we won't get anything done. So I understand. I fine going with that if everyone else agrees that we want to go forward, just focus on short-term rentals for now and kind of put or the group homes, so to speak, on the back burner.
I, for one, think it makes a lot more sense and be easier to handle.
All right.
And group homes we might find, we learned something here that swings over to group homes.
Great. Then we'll add that as another agenda item and moving forward. So it'll be an additional agenda item of group homes in old business.
All right.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to add regarding short-term rentals at this time?
God, I'm running out of
I
paper.
think I just want to recap right now, at least it sounds like we've got a working definition for short-term, non-owner occupied. We have a working definition for short-term owner occupied. We have some idea that we want to potentially have the owner occupied be permitted or conditional use, something within the business district. Whereas the short-term rentals, at least for now, we're considering it in the residential district, or probably as a conditional use, but we'll still work on that. So our next steps really are to identify what sort of conditions would be placed. And so we need to start exploring what sort of conditions we would place on a short-term
Why would
rental.
you,
Is that correct?
why would you differentiate though between the two?
Between owner occupied.
Yeah, in the different districts.
Because owner occupied
Mhm.
implies that it would be totally fine to rent out a room in your house anytime you want.
So you effectively have two families there at one time.
I think it opens up to being in a position where it's all but a dual family residence. I think it opens a door there, puts a little crack. And I think overwhelmingly the township agrees that we want single family residences on each lot.
And I can give you maybe an example of that just from an Airbnb that I stayed at this summer. We stayed in a home, and within the same 5 acres, they were also renting out an RV that people could also rent. And it was a very nice RV, but they had that parked on one corner of the property and the home was on the other corner of the property. We might be able to deal with that in other ways, but it's the idea that you have multiple renters now on the same property. And do we want that within the township?
I have to digest all that.
I think one thing that it seems like we are all on board with is the idea of that 30 days being kind of that's
Right.
cut off.
I don't
30
mind that.
days or less, yes.
But I'm just digesting the owner occupied versus not occupied in residential versus business.
Mhm.
So I need to think about that. But I do like your definition, separating them out.
Okay. Fair enough.
When I-
And again, as we're building out these definitions, we're not necessarily putting any restrictions, regulations. It's just like, all right, here we go. This is this. This is this. And then we can start figuring out, okay, how do we want to play with these moving forward?
Right.
How does the township want to implement this moving forward?
Right. Yeah, everything I said was just a working framework
Right.
to understand where the next steps are. and the
Exactly.
logic as to
But
what it
I think it also goes with the comprehensive plan though, too.
It could,
Yeah.
could very well. Certainly not going to be against it.
Mhm.
All right. So I guess what I'd like to do is,
Paper.
Tom, if you wouldn't mind coming up and
You
talking
take
about
notes when you go home?
the
Actually, I try to do them tomorrow. I can't.
Plan.
How much to do, because otherwise I forget. my
or
notes.
the request, I
I
should
write
say.
little words that make sense to me.
Tom Wilson, zoning inspector for Hinckley Township. So we've had Discount Drug Mart looking at the corner, Center Road and West 130th, a 5-acre parcel up there. And they want to put a retail store, a drug mart. And our code reads that if you have a retail in an enclosed building of 12,000 square feet or less, it's a permitted use. However, if it's 12,000 square feet or greater, then it becomes a conditional use. And the drug mart they're proposing will be 28,000 square feet. That's their standard drug mart they're building now. And so we've told them they need to apply for a conditional use, which they have done. And they'll appear before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the board will consider that conditional use. They've also applied for a second conditional use. Our code says if you have a drive-through, whether it be a restaurant or whatever, that's a conditional use. So the Board of Public Affairs will have two conditional uses to consider this month. What Suzanne and I have prepared for you is a site plan that shows the proposal for the location and so forth. And once this gets through the Board of Zoning Appeals, of course, it'll come before this board to talk about a site plan review. So that's basically it.
Are they occupying, is this the full 5 acres that we're seeing here, or?
Yes, if you look at,
I'm asking because I think in the B1 district for buildings and parking, 60% allowed to be used.
that's right.
And they look like they're very close, if not over 60%.
Well, 5 acres, 43,560 per square foot. 200 and what? 22,000. Yeah, it's big. And no, my calculations are that they're within that 60%. The 60% is building and parking and so forth.
Right.
But that's certainly something your committee here will have to make sure, and we'll make sure before we bring it to you. You've got this in your packet that shows the 4 parcels that are being considered. And one of the things that if the approval happens, I think one of the conditions that the board will put on that is that you have to combine all those, because you can't build buildings across lot lines. And so right now it's 4 individual lots, but probably when it comes to you guys,
This is
should it come to you
Right
guys,
here.
it'll be
Well,
it's right here.
around 1
Yeah.
acre. An interesting, we've had a lot of interesting things up in that.
Yeah, file cabinet full.
Yeah, okay, well, that's correct. So this is the latest. And so we'll see. Maybe next month we'll be back with something for you to look at if everything happens at the BZA this month.
Is it the north side of 33?
It's
South side.
South side. See?
Southeast side of the.
It's where the buzzard's roost currently is. Mhm.
so it would encompass all of those lots then, right? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Doesn't get rid of the buzzard trees?
I would have, yeah, well, they'll have an exciting closing.
That would be getting rid of the other place too then, right?
Caddyshack.
Caddyshack. Because that's on this one.
Mm-hmm. I haven't been in either one of them in a long time.
Caddyshack's good.
The food used to be good. Is that gal still cook? Big
Yeah.
girl?
It's good.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I haven't been there for a couple of years.
So obviously, there's nothing for us to do with this at this point. It's, I want to say like 5 years ago, we put in that, hey, just let us know what's coming down the pipe so we can study up before it shows up on our plate
But the hearing's the 22nd.
at the BZA.
Yeah.
So certainly something to
We'll
look through.
keep you informed. as we go along.
Appreciate it.
I just have a question.
Could you come up to the microphone, introduce yourself?
It is not an incendiary question, so everybody relax. Jim Larson, 20 Car Road. Is this proposed drug mart, is this in place of or in addition to the Tarmax proposal that's going in?
Yeah, the Tarmac proposal is dead.
Is that, so I'm to assume that the appeal that was put forward by the owners of that property was withdrawn, and
I don't know because, I mean, we have nothing to do with that.
yeah, just can't.
So ultimately, the BZA declined it, and they aren't even allowed to revisit that for another 18 months.
But the owner, as I understood, appealed it to Medina, whatever court of appeals.
Common pleas.
Yeah. So is that pending legal action still pending, or is it been withdrawn, or?
Honestly, I don't know.
Or is this just throw another ball in there and juggle one more ball? I mean, this is odd.
Here's the answer I can give you. I asked the county prosecutor that very question, and he said, your BZA has turned it down. You just move on with the next thing. So that's what we're doing.
So the owner is the same owner, I'm guessing. If that person should win that appeal, then he can either build the Tarmax or he can either build the drug mart after it goes through all the holes that one needs to go through. I don't know.
I think it's more logical. The owner wants to sell the property. So if he sells it to A, B, C, or D, as long as they meet no, I wouldn't think so. I don't know for sure, but I would think as long as he's getting the price he thinks it's
We
worth.
have to have Mr. Wallace, but we don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have questions to that. And no answers.
All right. I guess that'll get us over to the chair report for emails, correspondences received. Pardon me as I go through my phone here to find them all. All right. On November 5th, the day after our most recent meeting, got an email from Ms. Petterlin. It was addressed to both myself and Lindsay. Good afternoon, Matt and Lindsay. Please be advised that a public records request has been made. Please refer to the below email from Trustee Augustine for more details. I respectfully request that each of you print out your documentation separately and hand deliver to the office so I may organize and prepare for response. Should you have difficulty printing or are unable, please let me know and arrangements can be made. Please acknowledge the receipt of this public records request and respond to me directly by no later than Tuesday, as there is no need to respond to all. This will assist me keeping things in order. If you do not have anything to provide, please send me an email, subject line, public records request Augustine, and in the comments section that you have no records to provide. If you have information to gather, please let me know how soon I can expect to receive it in a timely manner. Please contact me should you have any questions. The email she referenced said, "Good morning, Suzanne. Due to a resident concern at last evening's zoning commission meeting, I would like to formally request a record of all communications to include emails and text messages between Matt Marzullo and Lindsay Rubel, Matt Marzullo and Nikki Nup Long, Lindsay Rubel and Nikki Nup Long, or any other combination of the above mentioned from September 1st, 2021 to November 4th, 2021. I'm grateful for your assistance in this matter, Melissa Augustine." All right. And I responded, "Happy to provide the information. What specific topics are the records request for? All correspondence is a bit too broad to enforce." Received a response from Melissa Augustine saying, "Good morning. I understand that this will not be an easy task with all of the things we juggle in life and I hope you understand that it is not easy for me to ask. However, we had a citizen public comment at the 11/4/21 meeting as to the making of decisions behind closed doors. If I were to ignore it, I would not be doing my job. The perception as to why I'm asking could easily be skewed. That is why I've provided the above explanation. It is not too broad a request, and I would appreciate that all communications as listed on the formal request are served in a timely manner. Thank you kindly, Melissa. And then on the 8th, I was CC'd on Ms. Rubel's response. Dear Trustee Augustine, thank you for your email. I take all township business very seriously, and I'm committed to responding to your request within the scope of my duties as an appointed alternate member of the Zoning Commission. Respectfully, personal cell phone records are not subject to Freedom of Information requests, except in a few limited circumstances, none of which apply in this situation. The request must be for a certain time frame and also must be for a specific topic. There's a slippery slope in requesting personal cell phone records, which are overly broad. Imagine if someone had requested your personal cell phone records carte blanche without any limitation that it actually pertained to township business or a specific issue. I'm not purporting to give legal advice on behalf of the township in this instance. Perhaps the prosecutor's office will weigh in on the necessity for the scope of the request to be limited so that the request is enforceable. The Ohio Supreme Court has spoken on this issue already and determined that these record requests must be for a specific time period and for a specific item of business. See Sinclair Media 3 Incorporated versus Cincinnati 2019, Ohio 2623. The request must not be overly broad or ambiguous pursuant to RC 149.42. If you are able to specify that your request is limited to discussion of short-term rentals and group housing, for example, that would be a permissible request, and I will provide those records ASAP. I assure you that I have the best interests of Hinckley at heart and wish to comply as soon as the request is narrowed. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. Sincerely, Lindsay A. Rubel. Then I was CC'd on the response that says, Ms. Rubel, the timeline has been established. The communication is inherently specific to township business. Melissa. Got an email from Suzanne regarding our attendance at meetings for the last year, where we all have to go through and confirm what meetings we attended over the course of the last years so that we can get the proper records and payment. Hi, and then I got one from Miss Nikki Nupp for water easement on Samodi's property. Hi, Melissa and Jim. I was hoping you could clarify something for me. Melissa, the trustee T on October 16th, we discussed the easement on John Samodi's property, which was signed in December of 2019. I've attached it here for your review. The easement is specifically for a water line to be run from the Redwood Falls development to Ridge Road. At the following trustee meeting on October 19th, you stated that you and Denise Clegg had conducted research and found a 2011 easement. After reviewing the 2011 easement you sent me, it was clear that the 2011 easement was not for Samodi's property, but for another property on the other side of the development. If you could, I would like clarification on the 2011 easement. Is there a 2011 easement on the property which Samodi purchased in 2014? Or was that 2011 easement unrelated and brought up at the trustee meeting in error? My apologies for the short notice, but I'm hoping that by sending this email now and attaching these documents here, you will have enough information to address this on Tuesday at the trustee meeting. In addition, at the November 4th Zoning Commission meeting, you stated, and I am paraphrasing here as I don't have your exact words in front of me, that the water easement on Samodi's property was done at the request of the county, not the township. I've also attached the Zoning Commission's meeting notes from February 1st, 2018, when they specifically addressed the addition of Samodi's lot to the development and the easement was brought up. According to the notes, page 7, Mr. Kraus, a co-developer of Redwood, stated that Mr. Samodi agreed to the easement through his personal property to satisfy the township's goal of getting water to downtown. My questions are, Melissa, is there a document you can point me to which states the easement was done at the county's request? Jim, as Melissa was not a trustee at the time and cannot answer this question, can you shed some light on why Mr. Kraus would believe it was the township's goal to bring water downtown? This is something that the trustees discussed in meetings and agreed to. I understand this is all water under the bridge. I'm bringing it up and asking about it repeatedly because water downtown is an issue that potentially affects all of Hinckley. And because of that, the residents deserve to know the intent and or plans of the trustees when this happened, 2017 to 18. And if those intents and or plans have changed. I appreciate your assistance in getting these questions answered and hope you have a nice weekend. Melissa's response, Nikki, easements are not township business and therefore the township has absolutely no decision-making or documentation as such. All information you have requested will be accessible through the county. I hope you have a wonderful week, Melissa. Back to the public records request on 11/12 to Matt Marzullo, Zoning Commission Board Member, and Lindsay Rubel, Zoning Commission Alternate. I've been notified that the records request provided below has not been met in accordance with the Hinckley Township Open Records Policy. I understand that this may be based on your personal determination that the request is too broad in scope. Medina County Assistant Prosecutor Brian Richter has been consulted and has stated that the request is not too broad in scope and may include text messages on personal devices pertaining to Hinckley Township business. Therefore, as appointed officials of Hinckley Township, you are directed to provide Suzanne the requested documents unredacted within a reasonable time frame as defined in the attached highlighted Hinckley Township Open Records Policy. If you have provided the documents as indicated above, disregard this message. If you fail to comply with this request in accordance with the township policy, I will forward the matter to the trustees. Martha Catherwood. I responded to Martha saying, thank you for your request, Martha. The requested information was provided to Suzanne on Monday morning. She responded back, good morning, Matt. The records you provided Suzanne do not comply with the requirements of the township policy, and your non-compliance will be forwarded to the trustees for their review. Redactions must include an explanation as to why the redaction was necessary and are to be reviewed and agreed upon by the prosecutor's office. This is an area that is highly scrutinized by the state auditor's office during the township's biannual audit. Martha. I responded. Good evening, everyone. Attached, you'll find the documents from the Freedom of Information request. The only information that was previously redacted were disinterested parties' email addresses. In all previous FOI Freedom of Information requests I've dealt with, removing those emails was standard to protect privacy of uninvolved persons. This should be all that you need from my end. Regards, Matt. Then I got a response from Martha saying, thank you, Matt. After reviewing the emails this evening, I could understand the redaction. Next, got an email from Suzanne saying, good morning, Matt. This is to acknowledge receipt of your email. The trustees will be notified of your submission. Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, and then we got one from Suzanne. Good morning, Matt. Please see below email chain. I did not realize that Mr. Pearl had mistyped your email address, and therefore the email that I had originally forwarded to you came back as undelivered. Please refer to email below and forward the request made by Mr. Pearl to me so that I may respond to him accordingly. Good morning, Matt. Suzanne, Nikki Long sent a couple of emails to the Zoning Commission that were read and discussed at last night's meeting. Assuming they are public record, could you work with Matt to have copies of the emails forwarded to me? No hurry on this. Thank you, Richard Pearl. I then received an email from Richard saying, Suzanne, the email address for Matt was incorrect. My apology. Matt, can you help Suzanne get copies of Nikki Long's emails for me? Thanks, Richard. And then I got one from, I responded to Suzanne, told her the Freedom of Information request packet that was on her desk had the information and asked if she wanted a digital version. She said, good morning, Matt. Thank you for your response. I respectfully ask that you forward the emails to me as requested, as I was not at the Zoning Commission meeting to understand what emails were referenced. Secondly, regarding the public records request by trustee Augustine, thank you for dropping off the emails. However, the copies you provided have redacted information. Please be advised that email should be provided as originally sent and received. The Open Public Records Act under the Sunshine Laws are specific to what information can be redacted. Please reprint and provide the original. Thank you. And then I got one from Suzanne saying, good afternoon, Matt. This is in follow-up to Mr. Pearl's request. On November 9th, 2021, I requested that you provide the emails from Nikki Long that were read and discussed on the November 4th Zoning Commission. Can you please forward the requested emails in their original format so a response may be given to Mr. Pearl? Which I then sent, and Mr. Pearl responded, thanks for staying on this, Suzanne, much appreciated. And the only other emails I received pertain to the preparation of the meeting agenda and minutes that we've already gone through on this in today's meeting. So as you can see, there was a lot going on this week or this month in the inbox. And other than that, I actually don't have much to report aside from the progress that we're making on the short-term rentals. Mr. Fisher, anything from you?
No, great job. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Rubel?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Ms. Crew?
I'm good.
No. Mr. Manley?
Nothing, thank you.
Trustee Kalina, anything you'd like to say?
Sure, I'll give a quick update on township happenings. In terms of zoning related matters, the Department of Planning Services Director, Denise Testa, which you guys have all met now, which was great to have that meeting happen. She provided a letter of support for our comprehensive plan grant, which I had written and provided to the county. That letter of support goes to the Board of County Commissioners. And so then they're the ones that make the final determination. We requested $3,500, which was basically half of the cost for the comprehensive plan. In terms of where we're at with the comprehensive plan right now, there was a contract that was received from OHM, and we forwarded that to the county prosecutor's office. He made many changes to the contract, and that is now back in the hands of OHM. So I'm waiting for their counsel to review that and get back with me so I can present that final copy to the Board of Trustees. And the Board of Trustees is currently in the process of selecting, making final recommendations for the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. So that's an ongoing process, but coming down to final candidates right now. In terms of me personally, I'll just say that it's really been my honor to work alongside all of you. I know how hard these jobs are. I know you certainly don't do it for the money. Because there's a lot of hours behind the scenes that are uncompensated time for you. And you guys do this because you really care about your community and you want to make a difference. And this is your way of serving the community and trying to keep Hinckley a great place. And so it's been my honor to work alongside you. I'm very proud of what this board has accomplished over the years. Made some, great improvements to the resolution and, really fought for what you believed in and for, what you felt was going to keep Hinckley a great place in the future. So I thank you personally. I hope that I've been a servant leader for you, both as your chair and as a trustee. I've tried to take the load off you as much as I can and help the board out in any way that I can. So I've enjoyed my time working with you, and I hope you've done the same working with me. So
I miss you, Chris.
Wish you guys continued. Good luck moving forward.
That was something I was planning on bringing up. I know the board, we will miss you. I know personally, I'll miss working with you on a regular basis, and I hope you come back, stay involved with us. And
well, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
I thought he was just going to be sitting in one of those chairs.
I thought he was going to come sit up here again.
Yeah, that would be a great idea too.
But no, thank you very much for everything.
So thank you. It's truly been my honor. I've enjoyed it.
Mr. Wilson, anything else you'd like to bring up?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Anything from the audience? Nothing. All right. So our next zoning commission organizational meeting will actually be January 6th, 2022. Wow. Yeah. Starting at 7 o'clock, and then we'll have our regular meeting to follow. Are there any other comments before we wrap things up tonight? No? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oh, go ahead.
I'll second.
Moved by Manley, seconded by Crew. All in favor? Aye. None opposed. The zoning commission regular meeting on December 2nd is adjourned at 8:48.
Recording stopped.
All right. Well, thank you.
Give some of this money to not start past 9 o'clock.
Yes.
You feel guilty.
Yeah, so, yeah, no.
I'm going to Foster's.
Everyone.
No, I have to wait for.
So, honestly,
You're going
reading
to
through this, like, I
Yeah,
was
that's
sitting there
awesome.
reading through, I'm like, oh my God,
We're all
this
going.
is like a perfect article
wanna go?
to share.
You and Ruth Ann?
Did you have picked a bigger font?
I like the big
Uh,
font.
I'm telling-
Once again, going with the trees here,
Next month
Matt.
I will.
You should have seen, so I tried printing this out. And originally I printed on 2 pages, and like, I've got good
Couple
eyes.
hours of Ron Road.
And I'm sitting here like this.
2 steps out.
I don't have that. Am I missing? I'm
It's right in front of your,
How would be why?
Condition over.
Like, I didn't see this thing.
Just getting those.
Is this online somewhere? Do we know?
Flat out, always having trouble.
Continue to provide it because none of us know anything about
none of us
this. So,
have this thing.
Yeah, I could tell from.
I know,
the first
yeah,
meeting
yeah.
that I came
And he's
to.
probably
Have
according to
a real good
inside-
understanding. That's why I said at the last meeting, you might have helped
He's probably
navigate
3 or 4 months away from not being.
do anything. Like I said, I've been short-term rental
I think I
before
covered it.
Airbnb and VRBO. And this is such a better way to do it is through those
Oh, I'm
venues than
then
ads
Craigslist
in
or,
newspapers
yeah, or,
and that sort
yeah.
of thing. That's what we started out doing.
well, I mean, it actually, so there's some municipalities, we'll call it, require that if you're gonna put it on VRBO, it has to be posted in town hall first.
Oh, I feel like an old.
Because what they're finding in tourist